Welcome to the Private Practice Elevation Podcast. Unlike other shows about marketing and growing a private practice, only the Private Practice Elevation Podcast takes you into the peaks and valleys of successful practice owners to give you the lessons they learned and the proven strategies that you can apply to your own private practice, helping you reach the next level in your business. I'm your host, Daniel Fava.
Today, we're talking about something a lot of group practice owners feel but don't always say out loud, the exhaustion of being the one everyone comes to. Maybe you've had this experience. You're on vacation and you're still answering texts from your team all week. Everything still routes through you, no matter how many people you've hired. My guest today is Brittany Schank, owner of Solace Counseling, a 13-clinician group practice in Fargo, North Dakota. She's built real specific systems for stepping back without the business falling apart. We talk about why this happens by default, what it costs you when you don't fix it, and the exact steps Brittany took from low-stakes committees to building out clinical leads to get her team asking her fewer questions. But first, let's hear from our sponsors.
Xanda is practice management software built for health practitioners. It brings scheduling, telehealth, secure notes, billing, AI, and automation together in one simple system. If you're ready to make your practice management easier, visit privatepracticeelevation.com/Xanda and start your free trial today. A year from today, what would your dream private practice look like? Would you spend less time chasing claims or only working with clients who value your skill set? What if you had more time for yourself? Alma empowers you to confidently accept insurance backed by an all-in-one EHR that simplifies scheduling, documentation, and day-to-day practice operations. Your dream practice is closer than you think. To learn more about Alma and receive 2 free months, visit helloalma.com/elevation.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you're having a really good week. Thank you for tuning in to the Private Practice Elevation Podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know that there are many podcasts out there and the world is saturated with information. So it really means a lot that you would hang out here. And I do hope that you're receiving value from this podcast. And, if there's anything you ever want to hear about, or maybe a suggestion for a guest to be on the show, please reach out, email info@privatepracticeelevation.com and let us know your thoughts. Or if you have a specific question, we can answer on the trail episodes. Love to hear those too. And make sure that we can just continue to provide value and what's going to really serve you and your private practice. So today we are at the end of our summer here in the Fava household. This summer has really flown by. We had a few trips planned and just some fun things that we got to do, including our annual Florida trip to the beach. And then we went on a 8-day road trip up to Michigan and South Haven. That was a lot of fun. But to be honest, I'm really ready to head back into the school year and just having more structure, more rhythms and routines, and have a little bit more focused and quiet time. It is certainly a challenge for me working from home, which I love. I love working from home and I wouldn't change that. In any way. I'm not the type of person who can go to like a co-working space and focus in and work there. I just do my best work at home. And I love it, but it's hard, when the kids are around. And right next door is our family room, and we don't have a basement where I can kind of hole up and have it be really quiet there, So they are with the babysitter this week, and then next week we start up school, and Caleb is going into kindergarten, which is crazy, and he'll be at the same school with his big brother Samuel, who's going into 4th. So we are excited for that. I know it's going to bring its own set of challenges and craziness, getting back into the school year. But, I always love the change of seasons. I love the rhythms. And, I think that there's going to be, for me, there's a lot of just extra time that I know I could really use. And, I've really been digging into AI and using AI agents to really support the work that we do at private practice, even support our own marketing efforts and this podcast, producing this podcast, all the things. And it really takes a lot of time to iterate and create, value and assets and things with with AI and Claude and Victor. Those are really the main tools that we're using right now. So anyway, excited for today's episode. We've got someone who's been on the podcast already before. We have Brittany Schank, and we are talking about the hidden cost of being needed. I think this was a very insightful episode and timely as well, because the things that she talks about really things that I experience in my own business and even my wife experiences in her private practice. And that's that situation where, you want to step away from the business and you've maybe created the SOPs, you've given the instructions, but there's still a lot of questions and a lot of things and approvals and things you need to touch while you're out, and you want to be focused on your family or doing other things, but you get those questions and those texts and those things that your team needs from you. And so, we talk a lot about why that happens, what you can do about it, and some really fun ways to give your team more responsibility and more freedom with decisions in your business. So Brittany Schank is the owner and CEO of Solace Counseling, a multi-clinician counseling practice in North Dakota. In addition to leading a 7-figure group practice, Brittany has served nearly 20 years in the Air National Guard, works alongside her husband as COO, and is raising 4 children. Most recently, she founded I'm Here, a software company created to solve a real-world operational challenge she experienced with her own practice. Brittany is passionate about leadership, entrepreneurships, systems, and helping business owners grow without losing sight of what matters most. So here is my conversation with Brittany. Welcome back to the podcast, Brittany. How are you doing today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to have you back on. I know that we spoke last year, and we'll also include the link to that in the show notes so people can catch up on that. And why don't we just start, with, for folks who didn't listen to that episode, tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, of course. My name's Brittany. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I own a group practice called Solace Counseling in Fargo, North Dakota. We have very friendly people here and unfriendly winters. So if you don't like winter, this isn't a great place to visit. But the people are top notch here. From the group practice side, we have 13 clinicians. It feels very rewarding and beautiful. I truly in the beginning, I didn't really know what group practice was going to look like. And so this feels really steady and stable. And we'll kind of talk more about that today and how did we get to steady and stable. Last time we had talked a little bit about the directory I had created for therapists to find supervisors and consultants. And then I am kind of a fixer. And most recently, I built an app called I'm Here. And it's just very simple. It's not a complex app by any means, but essentially to allow people to be notified, clinicians to be notified via text or email that their client is here. So clinicians aren't waiting and clients aren't waiting out front. So outside of that, though, I'm a mom. I have 4 beautiful, wonderful kids from currently ages 11 down to ages 2. My husband is the COO here, which is fun. Him and I met working, and so it feels very full circle now to be working back together. I like hanging out with my kids. I like playing Uno. I like beating people in Uno.
That's a good game.
I know, right? Like easy enough to beat.
Classic.
But, and the last thing is North Dakota is very close to, or where I'm at in North Dakota is very close to Minnesota, and there's a lot of lakes in Minnesota. And I love going to the lakes and just sitting by the water and fishing. And that would probably be one of the times that I can really find a good peace.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And before we hit record, we were just talking about summertime and trips and travel and all that stuff, which is, to me, it's kind of, there's pros and cons as a business owner. It's so exciting and wonderful that we have the flexibility to step away and be with our family, and so I love that. And I wouldn't give that up. But also there's the flip side of it, that sometimes when we're away as the business owner or leader or clinical director, whatever it is, that it can be hard to go on vacation and your team needs you. Your team has questions. And I shared, last month in June, we went to the beach, and this conversation came up with my wife and I, because she's got a team of about 5 clinicians, and she's done a ton of amazing work to set them up and give them what they need. But, questions come her way, or things happen that she needs to jump into or feels like she has to jump into at this time. So is that a common story that you hear, as you're supervising many clinicians, you talk to many therapists. Is that sort of a common thing that happens?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think many of us go into group practice. In part, I think one of the benefits that we see is the ability to step away and be
Yeah.
able to still provide, or like things keep running when you step away. And it's so interesting because I think many of us group practice owners were like, wait a minute, I don't feel like I can step away.
Yeah.
And just like you had said earlier, there's pros and cons to everything. And one of the pros to owning your own business is you do get to make decisions about when do you step away? What does that timeline look like? What are the sacrifices you're going to make to step away? But as a group practice owner, I don't know that it ever truly feels like you're able to fully step away.
Mm-hmm.
One of the conversations we had in our house recently, we like to do challenges. And so we're just coming off of a 6-month no candy challenge. And so we're
Nice.
talking in our house about like, what's the next? What should be our next 6-month challenge? And one of the things we were throwing around was no phones or no iPads. Our kids have iPads, but 1 day a week, no phones or no iPads. And it was so interesting that part of that conversation in my head had to consist of, is that actually a reality for me? Like, could I actually put my phone in a cupboard for a full day and not check it? Or is that neglecting the clinicians? What if an emergency came up? What if something big came up? And what would that be like for the staff here?
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting topic and conversation that I think can be very hard to piece apart when you're not a group practice owner, and might create some hope for being a group practice owner.
Yeah. And how does that, well, first of all, kudos to you for 6 months no candy with kids at the age that they're at. Oh, I don't know if my kids would go for that, maybe. But so how do we kind of get to that point? Like, it seems like that just naturally happens. I know for myself in my own business, I'm getting questions all the time still, from my team. So how does this just happen by default?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, okay, why or how does it happen by default? I think it is just that. It's by default. Like, you're the only one who can actually make the big calls because you're the one taking all the risk. And so, an example I think of, and I certainly have good news for people here too, not just bad news. But I think about, if like if worst case scenario happens. So for example, we were to go on a trip and like a catastrophic fire or something happened in the office. The only people who have access to the information of like, what is our insurance are the owners of it. And so there is a by default. It's kind of like our kids. It's like we can certainly place our kids in somebody else's care, but at the end of the day, there's a decision maker there. And that's kind of the oath that you take when you own a business is, or have kids. It's like, I'm the caretaker. I'm the person who's the decision maker here. And that's what happens in business. We become the decision maker.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point too, because a lot of the times when we talk about like entrepreneurship and automation and building a team, sometimes you can get this sort of pie in the sky sort of like, oh, I'm not going to have to do much and everyone's just going to take care of it. But I mean, that's a really good point to make. Like there's certain things, like being a parent, there's certain things that only you can take care of and they are your responsibility. But what about the other things? When we're talking about like solving everyone's problems and, there's so many times where you're like, you can solve this for yourself. How do we go from that place of where, oh, my team needs me so much and it's draining me and all that stuff? Like, how do we get started on getting to a place where that feels good and knowing that you can step away for a vacation and you're only going to get the absolute most important questions that only you can answer from your team?
Yeah. Yep. Super good question. I would say step number 1 is that it has to be what you want. Like that has to be what you want. And why I say that is because I am positive there was a point in my career where I thought being needed felt like proof that I was doing a good job. And so I think it has taken some time, and sometimes I need some reassurance to remember that if that's happening, that's probably actually proof that like there are way too many roads leading back to me, but also that's not allowing other people to work in the abilities that they truly have. And I think that's part of what you're saying right now, is there's a little bit of an undermining piece to that of thinking like, well, I'm the only one that holds all the answers. Certainly if there's a fire in the building, I might be the only one that holds all the answers. But I don't think what you're referencing are the big things like that. I think what you're referencing are things like there's a mad client. What are we going to do about that? Or,
Yeah.
I think about the admin team where they're like, shoot, the schedules aren't full. What should we do? Like, those are not decisions that I need to make. Or, a clinician, is upset that their office is too hot or cold or something like that. Those are
Yeah.
certainly decisions that don't need to come to me. But honestly, I think step number one is figuring out and being at a place as the business owner that that's what you want. And that's where it has to start, is that internal decision of, hold on, I don't want the dopamine hit of being able to answer all these questions, or like that can't be
Yeah.
the place I sit on where I feel so good about it. That
Mm.
is my job. We have to be willing and ready to like let that go and have processed through what does that mean for us.
Yeah. So kind of like do that sort of internal check of like, what exactly do you want from your team and the interaction? That's a really good point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hit on it a little bit, but I think it took me a long time to get there because it just felt so good for people to
Mm.
come to me and to have answers. And sometimes I had really good answers. And I think when I started to make the decision of, this might sound a little bit selfish, but it's very real. I think when I started to think like, I don't know that I want all the decisions to come to me anymore, is when I realized all of the decisions aren't decisions that make people happy. And then it was
Mm.
like, hold on, these weigh really heavy now. So when it's a decision of like, I need to decrease my caseload and my answer is yes, that feels like a really great conversation to have. But if the answer is no, those decisions were weighing very heavy on me. And so
Yeah.
it can easily come to a place of burnout or
Mm-hmm.
resentment. And I think sometimes those are the things that fuel us to say like, okay, I think we need to set some things up in place so all the decisions aren't coming to me. Also, all the weight isn't coming to me. And
Mm-hmm.
lastly, we're getting some reassurance from people or a team around us, like, hey, we're on the same page. This is accurate. This is the same lane of what we want morally and ethically and values wise for the business. But I think it certainly is an internal start, and there's a pull up, like an onion peeling that you have to do of really figuring out like, this feels so good, but it also feels
Mm.
so bad sometimes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know that resonates with me, and there's often times where because I'm that sort of feeler and empathetic sort of person. So especially when there's things that don't feel good in the business and they keep coming to me, and some of them, yes, I need to handle, but some of them, like, I don't. Like, I would have had a very happy day playing with my kids if you didn't tell me that such and such is going on, with this client or something like that, because it's like you can handle it, But so I totally get that. Yeah. And that can certainly lead to burnout.
Another thing that I've learned on this process, so I can't remember if I said it earlier, but we've had a group practice for 7 years now. And so
Mm-hmm.
we've gone through some different waves of what teams have looked like, or who's helping or who's not helping, or is it just me
Yeah.
kind of as a solo? And one of the things that I learned that honestly I wasn't expecting to learn is I was making an assumption that leading people was a job that was a tough, emotionally taxing job for everybody. It kind of, to me, was like some of those jobs we think of in the community where we're like, nobody likes to do those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little bit of how I saw leading people, is it felt like I'll just kind of take the tough job of leading people because that's the toughest one here and that's the most gracious thing I could do. But what I really realized after starting to create more of a leadership team, we call the team our leadership team, as we started to create that and people got into places and I felt bad handing certain tasks to them. What I realized is that was true. Some people really did hate the tasks that I was handing off, but actually some people genuinely, and I mean this sincerely, I believe they genuinely like the tasks I handed off. And I got to see this transfer of, I took a task that was really debtful to me, that just was really depleting me, and handed it off to somebody, and it literally was fulfilling to them. And
Yeah.
that was something I was not expecting to see. And so now I feel a little like, wow, Brittany, you held on to that for so long, and that was actually a gift to somebody else.
Right.
But before I kind of thought like that was never going to happen. This is just a tough job, and it's kind of rude or cruel to hand this job off.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's sometimes when we're so deep into it, like, we don't realize that people have different makeups of like what makes them happy. Like, I don't really want to be in a spreadsheet, but they love spreadsheets and they love numbers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
An example with that I think of, so we have 13 clinicians and we have an admin team of 4. So one of the things I think of is marketing. Like, I don't love marketing. And when I'm talking about marketing, like literally anything, but what I genuinely don't love is like video marketing. Okay. And I'll like make a nice pamphlet, or I'll make a nice, Facebook image or Instagram image. I'll do that stuff. But like the actually like sitting down, doing video marketing, things like that, not my jam. And there was one day that the admin team came here on their day off, like for a fun day. Nobody asked them to do this because they wanted to create TikToks for Solace Counseling together. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. You want to volunteer your time to do this? And like they did. And so that's a great example of something that was just like, ugh, to me. Literally somebody was asking to not be paid to come in and do. And they have talked about that Friday that they came in and did TikToks for so long. They share the TikToks with each other. They turned out hilarious. But that's a great example of, I would have never even asked for somebody to do that.
Yeah.
And they just chose to do that on their own. And so that's perhaps an example of, we put limits on people, but they're based on what we think the limit should be, not what their limits actually are or they want.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's funny. Like everybody's just it's so different. When you find those people in the right places, like that's got to be, so fulfilling for you to watch, happen. Like, wow, they're invested in this business and they're doing things that I don't want to do, but the business needs.
Yes. Yep,
and
that's
can benefit
exactly
from
right.
it.
Yeah, and cool to see the build of community. Like when I silo things and do it
Yeah.
myself, community isn't built with it.
Right.
But like that example with the admin team, like they built community amongst themselves in this group of people while doing that. And so I think as business owners, we can ask ourselves, like, what barriers might I be creating if I'm not opening up the opportunity for people to do things that they may or may not want to do.
Right. Well, to get kind of back to what we were talking about when we started out, thinking about your team coming to you, or like that being needed so much, and that could lead to burnout or hold back your business. What's maybe one of the first things, maybe you could just kind of share from your experience, like what's one of the first things that you did to kind of move from that space of needing to be needed? And can you give us like an example of maybe something you handed off or a system you put in place?
Yeah, I very clearly can think of one of the first things we did that really felt like this for me is we had created a couple committees, we called them. And so one was the fun committee and the other was a break room committee. And these kind of came hand in hand at the same time. And so essentially what I knew was needed is our break room was not set up in a very nice way. We do this fun thing in our break room where it's always stocked with like treats and drinks. And there's usually like surprise crazy treats in there, like the newest Oreo flavor. And so we stock the fridge and the cupboards with food and drinks for the staff here. But there was no that was kind of it in there. It was just a big open space. And so what I knew we needed, or what I wanted, was there to be a real break room, like a table, a place to sit, some organization. I didn't know what to do, how to do it. And certainly we could have hired somebody to come in, but we didn't have the budget for that. And so we created this break room committee. And I just sent out an email and I said, hey, here's what we're looking for. We've got a budget for this. Does anybody want to do it? And almost everybody on the team said yes. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me right now. And so that was the first wow, people are looking for something to do here. And so we created this committee and they made a really beautiful break room that they all got to have a say in. And it works well because they're the ones using it and they're the ones that created it,
Yeah.
And then at the same time, we had created the fun committee. And that essentially was hey, we want to do 2 activities a year that are fun. And we want your guys' input. Does anybody want to, 1, pick out what those are, and then 2, put them together? And we had so many people, again, it wasn't everybody, but we had so many people again where they were like, I want to do that. And they feel so great about being able to figure out what our fun events are going to be for the year. Yeah. And so there's a self-fulfillment inside of those. And for me, that was so helpful because now I don't have to come up with the 2 events. I don't have to schedule them. And I didn't have to come up with the break room or create something that maybe wasn't the best fit. So that was honestly one of the first things. And I bet we created those probably 5-ish years ago. And the break room committee doesn't exist anymore, but the fun committee does. And that has continued. And so when people want to get off of it, they just say hey, I got to get off of the fun committee. Honestly, nobody's gotten off of it though. And if somebody wants on it, when they come, we say, hey, we have
So
this
it's
fun
fun.
committee. Yes. Do you want to be on it or not? And people can just choose if they want to be on it or not. But that is
That's
a
cool.
very clear first step that felt, it felt like it was they were tasks that if they didn't get filled, it wasn't going to like ruin a day for me.
Right.
But it was so helpful that they did get filled. So it was
Yeah.
like low stakes is probably what I'm trying to say. A low stakes opportunity to try and test
Yeah.
out what does it feel like to kind of delegate or get people on a team to make decisions that I don't have to be there for.
Yeah, and that to me that reminds me of, I forget the author. He's a business coach. I'll have to put it in the show notes when I find it. But the book is called Who Not How. So like if you have like for you had a vision for your break room or more community and connection with your team, and you went to, okay, who can do this instead of how are we going to make this happen? Like, so it's just getting clear on what do you want, and then maybe not getting stuck. Oftentimes I can get stuck on, okay, how do we do this? How do we set this up so it's done right and how I want it to function? But more lean towards, okay, who wants to own this? Who would receive joy from doing this task of organizing and decorating the break room and getting that going? And then you end up with what you want, but without the mental load of how do we actually take care of this and get this done?
That's exactly right. And there certainly was a learning curve to it, because if people haven't seen that at your practice before, they're not quite sure that they like what authority do or don't they have. And so there was a little bit of learning in the beginning, especially with the break room, where it was like, hey guys, all I care about are these couple of things. Like, we need to have an air fryer. Here's the budget. We cannot go over this budget. Outside of that, literally do what you want to do. And there were a couple times people came to me where they were like, we were thinking of bringing in this shape of a table. Is that okay? And I just had to say to them, like, you guys get to choose. This is you guys. And so there might be some reminding, especially if it's the first time people are getting kind of the ability to make decisions. And so as the leader, just make sure you're not taking that opportunity to like re-give your power in that moment, and just keep pushing it back to them. You guys got this. I am certain you guys know this even better than I do at this point.
That's a good point. It's like making sure that you clearly communicate the boundaries of what you expect and then let them at it. Because I know like a lot of the times people can bring their own stuff, like, oh, I had a boss who was really in the weeds about everything. So it's like, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? But it's just making sure like, this is what I said. The rest of the decisions are yours. And then you can step back from that. I like that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And then as the business owner, being okay with how it turns out. Like, so let's say they put a circle table and I was hoping for a square table. Like, I just have to be okay with that, or I needed to communicate that up front,
Exactly.
Because I do think you can do a lot of damage if you tell somebody they have control and then you come in and take control, and it really undermines it, and then really undermines this process that you're talking about. Is like, there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of expectations. How do we like pull some of that off of us as a business owner? And you can really undermine that yourself pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah. And how does that work, or like what guidance do you have for more of like the clinical side of things, focusing on the daily functions of the practice and making sure that you're communicating those boundaries or processes, and then again, like letting your team sort of own things?
Yeah. Okay. So up until last year, the structure that we had on the clinical side of things was that it was me and one clinical lead. And so I directly oversaw half of the clinicians, and she directly oversaw the other half of the clinicians. And then this last year, we added a second team lead. And so now I just oversee the 2 team leads. So just for perspective of people listening, because I think sometimes people are like, how is she structured, or how could I do that? So just so it's clear how things are structured. So how we've had it set up when I was overseeing half of the team is the lead clinician and I would take days. And that was very, very helpful. And what that meant is like, if something escalated outside of our work hours that we're here, of course, if I'm here, the people I supervise can come directly to me. But if I'm not here, then everything goes to that clinical lead. And if she's not here, everything comes to me. When we took vacations, an email would go out to everybody saying, hey, so-and-so's out of the office this week. Everything needs to come my way. And at that time, I had very clear communication with that clinical lead of, hey, certainly I'm on vacation. Here are the types of things I want to come to me if they happen.
Yeah.
Everything else, handle. And if I don't like the way you handled it, let's just talk about it when we get back, but I will support everything that you do. And I had to be comfortable with when I trusted her. She's still here. I trusted her, and I still do trust her an incredible amount. And so I know that if she makes a decision I wouldn't make, there's a very understandable reason why she made that. And that's part of the risk that I take, is we're not all going to make the same decisions, and that's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when she was out, the same thing. Hey, so-and-so's out of the office. Everything comes my way. And I wouldn't reach out to her. There's really nothing to reach out to her for. There's no decision that she would need to make while she's on vacation. And so that's how we had it set up. Now that we have clinical lead over everybody, it's the same scenario. It's just they both know very clearly, like, hey, what should we send to Brittany or what should we not send to Brittany? And I have to continue to be clear with them of like, hey, that thing that just happened, can you send that my way? There was just something that happened the other day. And I was like, hey, could I just get a little bit more information on that thing that happened? There was a kind of a traumatic incident that happened to a clinician's family member. And I was like, hey, can I just get more information? Because I just need to know how we can support her, and also how does this look long term? And so that's just a teachable moment of like, hey, when this scenario happens, can I just get a little bit more information? Or if something's sent to me, I'll just say like, hey, thanks for, keeping me in the loop for future. If this happens, I trust your decision. Go ahead and go with it. And so there's teachable moments. Now that we're in so far with this setup and structure, it's just so uncommon now for me to get reached out to in a way that where it's like, hey, I didn't really need to know that. That's not something that needs to come to me. And if it does, I'll just say like, hey, that's a great thing for your supervisor. Can you just go directly to your supervisor? They'll take care of that. So is there some guiding still? Certainly there's guiding. Did it take time to teach this? Certainly it took time to teach this. But once you get it, it continues.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, and thank you for like sharing that sort of process of the structure and all that sort of stuff. And I'm curious for folks like my wife, she doesn't have a team lead just yet. She's got her 5 clinicians, 2 interns, so everything's coming to her. So how did you know when it was kind of time to bring on a lead, and what was that transition, season? What did that look like for y'all?
Yeah, that's a really fair question. And where your wife is at, in my opinion, is one of the harder places to be from the journey that I had, because you're right. It's like there really aren't other people to count on in the way that it's structured right now. So a couple of things that I did do back when I didn't have a clinical lead and it didn't look the way that it does now is there was one clinician. She is a clinical lead now, but I really did trust her at that point. She was a clinician. She was not a supervisor. She wasn't anything like that. But I knew I could trust, like, if somebody was like, shoot, this hard thing happened in session, who can I go to? I knew I could trust her. And so I had a conversation with her back then and said, hey, would it be okay if for these next couple of days while I'm out, if there are clinical related questions, like, do I need to file a CPS report? What modality should I use in this session? Can I just vent? Is it okay for me to send people your way? And again, this is one of those moments where I felt bad because I'm like, I'm not paying her anymore to do this. She doesn't have a title for this. She was so tickled pink and felt like so honored that I had trusted her in that way. And also it like gave us all the ability to see what we know now. It gave us all the ability to see like she actually does have what it takes to be in more of a leadership role. When the business is ready for that, she's a great person to look at for that role. So I would set it up internally. And then I would also be really clear with the clinicians what's something that should come to me during this time and what's something that, homies, I got all the trust in you. You do your thing. When we get back, we can talk about it. You will not be in trouble for it. Use your best judgment, and I trust your judgment while I'm away. But here are the things that you need to call me for. If something happens with a subpoena, I do like to be alerted of CPS reports. So that's something I would say, hey, can I just get a quick phone call of the CPS report, how it went, and if you have any questions about it. So for me, it would be subpoenas, CPS reports, or if the clinician were struggling, if they're like, I feel really terrible about this, I don't know if I did the right thing, then give me a quick phone call. If that person were in place though, I'd say, hey, go to that person, they're available, and I'd send an email out to the team and say, so-and-so is going to take care of clinical questions while I'm out. Go ahead and reach out to them. And then to that person, hey, if you can't handle it, if it's something outside of what you're comfortable with, now you reach out to me.
Yeah, that's very, very helpful. Thank you for sharing that. It's so good to hear someone's process who kind of went through went through these transitions. And so, I mean, it sounds like really starting with like getting clear. And this kind of brings us back to like where we started, what do you want? What is going to, help you thrive and the business thrive? And then getting really clear on like communicating that to your team at whichever stage you're at right now.
Yeah, and I think many of us practice owners think health of the business or health of the employees is direct accessibility to us. And I would certainly disagree with that. I would say health of the business is that there's clarity on what somebody needs to do in situations. And that doesn't require direct access to anybody for that.
Yeah.
And so I would just try and change that thinking. And I think a lot of us feel that I need to be on call 24/7. No, you need to have processes set up for what should be done. And there's clarity inside of that. And people have trust of like, oh, I know if this happens, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Brittany. I really appreciate you kind of cracking open your experience and how you've grown with your team and leadership, and really creating these boundaries that really help, private practice owners thrive. So why don't you share a little bit more about where people can find you if they want to learn a little bit more about you and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I am on Facebook at Solace Counseling FM. You can also email me. Are you able to put my email in the show notes?
Sure, if you want to, we can.
Yep. You can put my email in the show notes. It's kind of a long email, which is why I'm not just saying it on here. But so yeah, you can email me if you have any questions. I've been through kind of the thicks of every stage. I certainly can see benefit in single practice, group practice, many clinicians, a few clinicians, agency work. I can see the benefit in all of them. And so if somebody's, trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, should I stay at my agency or go into individual practice or whatever, I'm so happy to help, or just to give a couple tidbits of like, here's what I did. I am certainly not an expert in the field by any means. I'm not a consultant, anything like that, but just from a person-to-person standpoint, I'd be happy to share some things that worked for me. It doesn't mean it'll work for everybody though. But I'm happy to be a sounding board.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Brittany. Thanks so much for sharing your experience and your time today. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me again.
I'd like to thank Alma for sponsoring this episode of the Private Practice Elevation Podcast. A year from today, what would your dream private practice look like? Would you spend less time chasing claims or only working with clients who value your skill set? What if you had a network to reach out to for questions or free continuing education? What if you had more time for yourself? Alma empowers you to confidently accept insurance backed by an all-in-one EHR that simplifies scheduling, documentation, and day-to-day practice operations. With a network of engaged providers and free CE resources, Alma makes it easy for you to build the practice of your dreams on your terms. Alma believes that when therapists get the support they need, mental health care gets better for everyone. Learn more about Alma at helloalma.com/elevation. Your dream practice is closer than you think. Get started now and receive 2 free months at helloalma.com/elevation. Running a private practice can feel like a juggling act. You're the clinician, the scheduler, the biller, and even the IT department. Xanda makes it all easier. Xanda is practice management software built for health practitioners. It brings scheduling, telehealth, secure client notes, billing, AI, and payments into one easy-to-use system. Clients can book appointments online, receive automated reminders, and access a secure client portal while you manage everything from one dashboard. That means fewer administrative headaches and a smoother experience for everyone. If you're ready to spend less time on admin and more time with clients, visit privatepracticeelevation.com/Xanda to start your free trial.